YouTube. So today we're going to be back at it again with our good old pal, Dogmatic Dave, otherwise known as Professor Dave, who runs the Professor Dave Explains YouTube channel that has a very suspect, allegedly 3.32 million subscribers. Um, and so Dogmatic Dave, his typical shtick is usually within, quote unquote, within the, scientific realm, around scientific topics and debates on evolution and reviews on, you know, biology and cosmology and things like that. But today, Dave is completely out of his element. I've done a lot of reviews on multiple Dave videos, just demonstrating how wrong, unscientific, manipulative, how much just dumb things he says, how much awful rhetoric he uses, how manipulative he can be. But this is probably the worst video I've reviewed of Dave. I mean, this is Dave, I'm going to say, getting completely out of his element, because in this video, he's not really talking about his normal things, debunking creationism or something like that. This is getting into politics, the culture, broader cultural phenomenon within politics and society and things like that. And I mean, this is just low IQ, Young Turks, CNN, secular talk with Kyle Kozlinski or some of those other figures. I mean, this is just low level crap from Dogmatic Dave. I mean, we're going to demonstrate in multiple ways, multiple things that he brings up, just how wrong he is, how incoherent his message is. I mean, he contradicts himself multiple times in this video alone. And I get so excited about this, because it's so much fun mocking Dave, because he himself he's just that, your garden variety, typical pretentious atheist, just thinking how right he is. And all the people who follow him and all of his fans are going to get in my comment section and just demonstrate time after time, like they always do, just what a low tier audience Dave has. His audience will sit there and say, oh, this channel, this channel says things like, oh, there's dogmatism within the scientific community and academia. Therefore, you're saying, they equate that to saying science and the scientific method is dogmatic, that's not what I'm saying at all. Those are two different things. That's called a straw man. I know you don't know anything about that because you listen to people like Dogmatic Dave, and how that's, demonstrating in this video the dogmatism within the scientific community and just how corrupt and weird the academic institutions and the narratives within a lot of these areas, just how weird they are, how immoral they are. I don't even see how some of this stuff is even debatable at this point. I mean, it's just some of the stuff just goes without saying. But you have, audiences like Dogmatic Dave who just demonstrate again, how they'll just believe anything. I mean, this video right here is just low tier crap, just low IQ crap. So this is not a very long video, but we have multiple things we're going to get into. I may even skip some things just because it's just not even worth it. Like, why even discuss some of this stuff? And you can't hit all the points on Dogmatic Dave videos because they're just so manipulative and just nonsensical. But this is him discussing about what he should have said on Piers Morgan and going on the dangerous rise of anti-intellectualism. Just demonstrating how how much fear mongering Dave does. He does a lot of fear mongering in this video, and this is not the only area or video that he does it. But we're going to go ahead and get started. So here we go.
To start, I had hoped to work in this quote from Isaac Asimov. There is a cult of ignorance in the United States, and there has always been. The strain of anti-intellectualism has been a constant thread, winding its way through our political and cultural life, nurtured by the false notion that democracy means that my ignorance is just as good as your knowledge.
Yeah, as if there's no reason to for tons of people in our society to distrust and be apprehensive, shall we say, on what the narratives being pushed and things that are promulgated in universities and research institutions and in the scientific community and things like that, as if there's that just came out of nowhere. The rise of just people questioning the authority and the accuracy of all this. I'm gonna start my review of this video with my own quote from Arnold Reelman. So, who is Arnold Seymour Reelman, known as Bud Reelman? Was an American internist and professor of medicine and social medicine. Uh, he was also the editor of the New England Journal of Medicine from 1977 to 1991. And then Railman ended his career as a professor emeritus at Harvard Medical School in Boston, Massachusetts. So, much more highly educated person than Professor Dave, was an actual professor. Well, what is someone like this who is within these institutions, actually taught at a very prestigious institution? What did people like him say? And let me say, this is one of tons of quotes from plenty of people within academia and the scientific community who says things like this. So Reelman was an uncompromising critic of the American healthcare system as a profit-driven industry. He once said, the medical profession is being bought by the pharmaceutical industry, not only in terms of the practice of medicine, but also in terms of teaching and research. The academic institutions of this country are allowing themselves to be paid agents of the pharmaceutical industry. I think it's disgraceful. Yeah, there's no reason. There's no reason why random people like me are a little skeptical of, you know, universities and the scientific community and things like that. Yeah, people within these areas and within these communities say stuff like this. This is not a new quote. This quote is from years ago. Yeah, that's just to wet your whistle a little bit before we get into institutions and what they're teaching today, and all the things that scientific communities and academia and all the things they were wrong about. We're going to go over multiple aspects and multiple topics.
This quote is from 1980, and it's been echoed by other great thinkers like Carl Sagan, who spoke about the public being unable to grasp the technology we all use every day and having no ability to set their own agenda or ask the right questions, culminating in a celebration of ignorance. He said that in 1995. Even these two could not have foreseen how bad this has gotten in the 21st century, with people now questioning the shape of the earth and the validity of basic arithmetic.
I doubt they could see how, very intellectual, quote unquote, reputable people also say things and teach things like chromosomes don't determine your sex or gender. Promote things like, yeah, of course a man can be a woman and a woman can be a man. Can't even really define those things anymore. Yeah, I'm sure even Carl Sagan may have been a little curious about that.
This anti-science fervor makes us easy to manipulate because any contrarian message is bought en masse.
Yeah, any contrarian message is bought en masse. They're not kicked off YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. They're not ostracized out of academia. It's just bought en masse. All the conspiracy theorists is bought en masse. No, they're not. No, they're not. Contrarian messages who go against people like the shill known as, Professor Dave are not allowed, they're not, they get ostracized out of academia, they get ostracized out of Hollywood, they get ostracized out of the media, they have their careers destroyed. I mean, just to demonstrate how wrong the mainstream academia, the media, uh, the quote unquote scientific community has been on tons of things. How right conspiracy theorists have been. Who Dave, one of my videos that I reviewed, he can't stand conspiracy theorists. Okay. Well, I bet a bunch of Dogmatic Dave fans, were the same people decades ago or a decade ago saying things like, conspiracy theorists and chemtrails, they don't exist. That's just a conspiracy theory. Chemtrails, you're just a conspiracy theorist. Really? Really? Let's see here. Chemtrails are a conspiracy theorist. Hey, what do you know? Here's Scientific America article from March 16th, 2021. 8 states are seeding clouds to overcome mega drought. What? The government and institutions, probably nonprofit, being funded by climate alarmists who are clearly not right wingers, are spraying crap into clouds and into the atmosphere, like silver iodide and things like that. I mean, yeah, this is Scientific America. Let's look at this. MIT Technology Review. A startup says it's begun releasing particles into the atmosphere in an effort to tweak the climate. What? So there's institutions and groups out there trying to control the climate by spraying aluminum and things into the air? That's really crazy. I thought this was a conspiracy theory. I thought chemtrails is a conspiracy theory. A startup claims it has launched a weather balloons that may have been released reflective sulfur particles into the stratosphere, potentially crossing a controversial barrier in the field of solar geoengineering. Geoengineering refers to deliberate efforts to manipulate the climate by reflecting more sunlight back into space, mimicking a natural process that occurs in the aftermath of large volcanic eruptions. Yeah, chemtrails are not, they're not a conspiracy theory. Here's the National Library of Medicine. Abstract. The 1968, let's see. Do I have any? Okay. Well, here's another area, just a completely different area where the government, doctors, scientists got things wrong, where we were all taught, or plenty of Americans were taught for a generation, decades, that eggs contribute to really bad cholesterol and you're going to have a heart attack and they're horrible for your diet. You need to limit how many eggs you eat. Here's the National Library of Medicine. So this is a .gov website. This is not some conspiracy website. Abstract. The 1968 American Heart Association announced a dietary recommendation that all individuals consume less than 300 milligrams of dietary cholesterol per day and no more than 3 whole eggs per week. This recommendation has not only significantly impacted the dietary patterns of the population, but also resulted in the public limiting a highly nutritious and affordable source of high-quality nutrients, which was limited in the diets of most individuals. The egg industry addressed the egg issue with research documenting the minimal effect of egg intake on plasma lipoprotein levels, as well as research verifying the importance of egg nutrients and a variety of issues related to health promotion. In 2015, dietary cholesterol and egg restrictions have been dropped by most health promotion agencies worldwide and recommended to be dropped from the 2015 dietary guidelines for Americans. It's actually healthy to eat eggs. The American Heart Association, a quote-unquote scientific institution, scientific research, body, committee who was run by scientists who were educated at, probably top schools and universities in the country. They were completely wrong about something. Literally the opposite of what they were promoting was true. What do you know? They were wrong. I mean, just good Lord. Holy mackerel. Yeah. So, I mean, here's another thing. There's another thing. Uh, yeah. So I just brought up something, just Googled it because I know that this would have been seen as a conspiracy theory literally just a few years ago. COVID vaccines and side effects. The two serious adverse events following COVID-19 vaccination currently used in the United States, uh, are anaphylaxis and myocarditis, pericarditis. It has occurred at a rate of approximately 5 cases per 1 million vaccine doses administered. I'm sure that's not manipulated at all. But literally, it's admitted now there are side effects as it relates to your heart to the COVID-19 vaccination. That no, that's a conspiracy theory. That would never happen. Once again, the conspiracy theorists were right. And for every Dogmatic Dave fan that says, "Oh, I mean, it's very rare." Yes. Once again, probably I question the data. I question the data. I consider the source who's saying it's quote unquote rare. Yeah, I mean, just a few things to demonstrate how wrong the mainstream has been and how right the quote unquote conspiracy theorists have been.
No matter who is telling it or what their motives are, we are witnessing a multimodal anti science empire operating through mass media and legislation, moving towards state sanctioned pseudoscience. And we don't have to speculate as to how harmful this can be. We have history to reflect upon. Persecution of scientists under Stalin was widespread.
Persecution under Joseph Stalin was widespread. Oh my gosh. Dogmatic Dave's going to go into how dangerous theocracies are. And his persecution of science due to governments, because he's so scared of theocracies and religious folks. One of the examples he uses is an atheist, a communist atheist. Where is it? Yes. Joseph Stalin was an atheist. He was a strong opponent of religion, believing that it was a way to control people and that it was childish to believe in something else. Literally, his example for one of the major points in this entire video is to use someone who holds very similar beliefs about religion, religious institutions, the moral ethical system, the culture that religion believes, is Joseph Stalin. I mean, is it a wonder, atheist, that arguably the most secular century in human history, the 20th century, was also the bloodiest? I have a theory as a Christian, because your atheist ideologies are so incoherent and you base so much stuff like the Young Turks and CNN and Dogmatic Dave and people, atheists in general who are left wing and Democrats and things like that, who base things, their ideology can basically be broken down as personal preference to a degree. Because you have no standard for morality and what is or is not moral, you can't create a cohesive, coherent society. And your belief system is so incoherent as it relates to atheism and evolution and being a left wing Democrat. I mean, what you people believe and what Dogmatic Dave believes is so contradictory and incoherent in multiple ways. It's embarrassing. I mean, people like Professor Dave are admittedly left wing. In this video, he says he's not voting Democrat anymore, which means that he used to vote Democrat. And he was, left wing, and he's also an atheist, and he's also a massive proponent, supporter of evolution. Evolution is contrary to a lot of left-wing public policies, like immigration. It's very contradictory. As a Darwinian evolutionist, you are admitting that A, based on Darwin's own theory, that there is a hierarchy to the races, and B, that if populations of people are separated from one another for generations and long periods of time, they will develop different biology. So it's not merely skin deep. So you're going to have massive problems when you have different populations of people who have been separated by long periods of time. They're going to have different genetics. There's going to be differences that, yes, it's more than skin deep. Your ideology believes that. So, what is that going to lead to? Because you people also believe in mass immigration from people, from countries and groups of people that are not only violently more religious than your average evangelical Christian in the United States, they breed at a much higher rate. Professor Dave, I would be willing to bet, doesn't have any kids. Neither do people like Bill Maher. Religious people have lots of kids. Yeah, you have a problem. You have a problem, atheist. Your birth rates are way low. Yeah, I mean, you people contradict each other all the time. All the time. I mean, let's just see more ridiculous stuff from Dogmatic Dave.
Lysenko was a non-scientist who was promoted to a high scientific position under Stalin's regime, and who convinced Stalin that genetics and relativity were evil. He denied the existence of genes.
He was a non-scientist who was promoted to a high level, to give authority and whatnot, as if being a scientist is what delineates between good and evil, which atheists have you have no standard for that. Atheists have no coherent, objective standard for what is good and what is evil, what is right, what is wrong, what is moral, what is immoral. You have none of that. So, let's see. We're going to go through. Here's an actual scientist. Here's an actual scientist. This is what is this dude's name? Chemist Sidney Gottlieb. So, what did this scientist do? As if it's bad to promote non-scientists to positions of authority. Well, I mean, as if being a scientist is the factor that's really important. The CIA's secret quest for mind control, torture, LSD, and a poisoner in chief. This is from NPR. During the early period of the Cold War, the CIA became convinced that communists had discovered a drug or technique that would allow them to control human minds. In response, the CIA began its own secret program called MK Ultra, which I'm sure at the time, there were whistleblowers who were talking about this, that, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. Yeah, not a conspiracy theory. To search for a mind control drug that could be weaponized against enemies. MK Ultra, which operated from the 1950s until the early 60s, was created and run by a chemist, a scientist. I mean, clearly he's going to be an upstanding individual of great moral character that atheists can't really define what morality is. Named Sidney Gottlieb. Journalist Stephen Kinzer, who spent several years investigating the program, calls the operation the most sustained search in history for techniques of mind control. Some of Gottlieb's experiments were covertly funded at universities and research centers. Oh, you mean places within the scientific community and academia? Kinzer says while others were conducted in American prisons and in detention centers in Japan, Germany, and the Philippines, many of his unwitting subjects endured psychological torture ranging from electroshock to high doses of LSD. I'm pretty sure kids were involved in this too, according to Kinzer's research. Let's see. Yeah, somewhere in here it talks about how his research led to people dying, people being permanently, having their psychological abilities destroyed. I mean, he's a scientist, though. I mean, clearly that's what defines the good and the bad. And we don't want a non-scientist in a position of power. Yeah, being a scientist does not determine the morality and the truthfulness and the character of an individual. It's much deeper than that.
To address agricultural problems, he promoted a pseudoscientific practice called vernalization, and millions died of starvation as a result of crop failures. Scientists who refused to renounce genetics were left destitute or even executed. Are we at risk of repeating such events? Absolutely. Let's face reality. Trump is going to win the election.
Debatable. Trump is going to win the election? He's had 2 assassination attempts. Due to rhetoric from places like YouTube and the media and academia and Hollywood and clearly very left-leaning sources. There's no guarantee Trump will win the election. He didn't win the last election, allegedly.
Could he bring a Lysenko-like figure into his cabinet and begin persecuting real scientists? Absolutely.
As if there's no persecution going on in the United States right now. I mean, how many felonies and quote unquote trumped up charges have been placed against Donald Trump? He's been arrested. Yeah, it's all the right wingers and religious folks that are just being the authoritarians now and kicking people off of YouTube and kicking people out of academia and Hollywood, and it's not Kamala Harris and Joe Biden in charge, allegedly. It's right wingers that are throwing people in jail and doing all kinds of crazy stuff that run YouTube and Hollywood. I mean, this is the dumbest. This is just stupid.
Will he try to expand executive power and abuse his position to the point of authoritarianism? Probably, and there are plenty of wealthy people who will help him try to do that. I won't go into detail about Project 2025, but it's not a conspiracy.
You know what he won't go into detail about? How about Project 2030 that is promoted by globalist, left-leaning, just communist freaks? Literally. Let's talk about 2025 that ends no-fault divorce. Based. Complete ban on murdering the most innocent form of life, unborn children in a mother's womb. Based. I mean, oh my God. But you know what Dogmatic Dave won't talk about? Project 20 or Agenda 2030. Agenda 2030. Let's look at. Oh, here's another one. Here's another one that we'll get into that. Well, let's just stay on topic. God, there's so much stuff to get into. So here's the Great Reset. This promoted by the World Economic Forum. The Great Reset that clearly doesn't have, Democrats and liberals, and it clearly has, authoritarian, staunch Christian theocrats and authoritarians who are promoting the Great Reset and nationalism. That's who runs the World Economic Forum, the International Monetary Fund, George Soros. I mean, literally, this is Agenda 2030, or this is the Great Reset promoted by the World Economic Forum. These people are not nationalists. These people are not Christian. These people are very globalist, left-leaning people who run things like YouTube that promote people like Dogmatic Dave. Here's the Great Reset. Our world has changed. Our challenges are greater. Our systems need a reset. Well, how are you going to do the reset? You're going to completely overhaul economies, the way people live, in an authoritarian nature, under the guise of safety and protection and things like that. I mean, this is the stuff these people promote. Here's TED Talks. TED Talks that has 41 million subscribers. TED Talks, massively pushed on YouTube, which is not a right-leaning communication, platform, that has a video that says, "Own nothing, have everything." Listen to what this person says.
Imagine a world where the richer you are, the less you own. A world where a fancy car, a large house, and expensive clothes cease to be a status symbol and become a burden, while experiences replace belongings.
I mean, yeah, you will own nothing and be happy. I mean, look at this. This is the World Economic Forum. Here's the whole you will own nothing and be happy. Here's the start of this video. It reads, you'll own nothing and you will be happy. Whatever you want, you'll rent and it'll be delivered by drone. The US won't be the world's leading superpower. That doesn't sound good. As an American, I'm not sure how I feel about that. You know, how are you gonna determine all this? You're gonna determine this by the removal of private property? Yeah, that doesn't sound authoritarian, dogmatic Dave. Let's talk about 2025 and what Trump is gonna do. Yeah, let's not discuss Agenda 2030, the Great Reset, stuff that the World Economic Forum pushes. You will own nothing and be happy. Stuff that TED talks about. Let's not discuss the Bilderbergs or the IMF or the Council of 300 or anything that happens in Davos. Yeah, it's the nationalist right wingers that you got to worry about who are the authoritarians right now. This is how stupid the crap is that Dave talks about. This is stupid.
It's a real plan to move America into the first stages of Christian theocracy, and it's already underway. This is the evil upon our doorstep, and while it should receive far more attention than people like Terrence Howard, we should recognize that it's all different shades of the same phenomenon.
You're an atheist, Dave. You're an atheist. Define for me your objective standard for what is evil. This is why atheists get absolutely obliterated in debates when it comes to metaphysics and philosophy. Oh, are you pre-supping me, bro? Yeah, when you deal in debate, you're dealing and you act in the art of debate, discussing ideas and things like that, you're inherently dealing in philosophy. That's why someone like Professor Dave would get utterly obliterated by someone like Jay Dyer or, any above average IQ person who is decently well read. I mean, someone like me, a nobody on YouTube, I could easily debate Professor Dave on multiple issues. I mean, he has no justification for what is evil. Why is it evil? Why is a Christian theocracy evil, Dave? And by the way, Terrence Howard, nobody cares about Terrence Howard. Most of the right wingers would probably look at Terrence Howard, actual right wingers. He's a Hollywood guy. I'm a right winger, so I trust people from Hollywood, actors. I'm going to pay attention to him. I mean, it's just so ridiculous.
Anti-science sentiment does not arise out of thin air. Science is becoming increasingly more complicated and therefore difficult for the public to understand. And some people lash out due to the discomfort this produces. But more importantly, there are vested interests in promoting this mentality stemming from Republican-funded think tanks.
Yeah, it's all from Republican-funded think tanks. We're not going to get into George Soros. We're not going to get into any liberal-funded think tanks. We're not going to get into the ACLU. Good Lord, the liberal lobbyists. How politicians, Democratic politicians, are influenced by their donors. I mean, oh my gosh, the Heritage Foundation. Yeah, let's completely ignore things like the World Economic Forum. Let's completely ignore, the fact that George Soros heavily influences, someone with dual citizenship, by the way, heavily influences, anti-traditional American values and things like that. It's of course, it's George Bush. George Bush, who, yeah, kind of weird how George Bush, and establishment Republicans really don't like Trump either, because he's, George Bush is so right wing. He's kind of buddy with a lot of Democrats and liberals. Isn't that a little weird? A little weird conservatives, your rhino Republicans and Trotskyites. I mean, this is just so dumb.
The deliberate sculpting of a populace that is not only science illiterate,
Picture this. You're sitting at home alone watching YouTube videos, wondering why you can't find the motivation to do
I
the
don't want
things
to
you
picture
need in
this.
Literate, but actively hostile towards science. Denial of climate change is in the interest of energy producers.
No, let's look at climate change. Let's just review climate change. That's a conspiracy. All you conspiracy theorists, you clearly don't. There's clearly no reason to question all the policies and the politics behind climate change and the funding and where the money goes and how the theory has changed. I mean, look at this. I've already looked at this. Yeah. Okay. So in the 1970s, global cooling was a thing. And just to demonstrate all the Dogmatic Dave fans, all the, oh, this is a conspiracy theory. Oh, this really wasn't that big of a deal. Yes, it was. It actually was. So in the 1970s, scientists, academia, the media, all these people were in many ways latched on to the idea that the Earth was cooling. I mean, just to demonstrate, here's Scientific America. This is an article from January 2014. How the global cooling story came to be. 9 paragraphs written from Newsweek in 1975 continue to trump 40 years of climate science. It is a record that has this author amazed. Number one, that's not the only article that was written on global cooling. And we're going to demonstrate how just this one article alone had multiple science opinions on it. So this author was a science editor of Newsweek 39 years ago when he pulled together some interviews from scientists, not one, plural, and wrote a 9-paragraph story about how the planet was cooling. What? There were multiple scientists? Ever since, Gwen's global cooling story and a similar Time magazine piece have been brandished gleefully by those who say it shows global warming is not happening, or at least that scientists and often journalists don't know what they are talking about. Yeah, this is Scientific America admitting that scientists and this was actually a thing. Here's the Cato Institute. Oh no, the Cato Institute. Oh. Yeah, I know how liberals and left-wingers and Dogmatic Daves would react to something like the Cato Institute. Completely don't care. Here's an article on the looming horror of global cooling. This is from February 2009, just to demonstrate how it wasn't just one little article that popped up in the 1970s from Newsweek by one person who caused this controversy. No. In the 1970s, a major cooling of the planet was widely considered inevitable because it was well established that the northern hemisphere's climate has been cooling or getting cooler since about 1950. This is New York Times from May 21st, 1975. Although some disputed that the cooling trend could result in a return to another ice age, the Times, September 4th, 1975, others anticipated a full-blown 10,000-year ice age involving extensive northern hemisphere glaciation. Science News, March 1st, 1975, and Science Magazine, December 10th, 1976, respectively. The continued rapid cooling of Earth, Global Ecology, 1971, meant that a new ice age must now stand alongside nuclear war as a likely source of wholesale death and misery. International Wildlife, July 1975. The world's climatologists are agreed that we must prepare for the next ice age. Science Digest, February 1973. Yeah, sounds really familiar. Every scientist agrees on, global warming and climate change. I mean, because of the ominous signs that the Earth's climate seems to be cooling down, meteorologists were almost unanimous that the trend will reduce agricultural productivity for the rest of the century, perhaps triggering catastrophic famines. Newsweek cover story, The Cooling World, April 28, 1975. Yeah, I mean, it's just, this was not one little article. This was absolutely a thing. I mean, continuing, armadillos were fleeing south from Nebraska. Heat-seeking snails were retreating from Central Europe. European forest, the North Atlantic, was cooling down about as fast as an ocean can cool. Glaciers had begun to advance, and growing season in England and Scandinavia are getting shorter. Christian Science Monitor, August 27, 1974. Yeah. Here's Wikipedia, global cooling. Introduction and general awareness and concern. By the 1970s, Scientists were becoming increasingly aware that estimates of global temperatures showed cooling since 1945, as well as the possibility of large-scale warming due to emissions of greenhouse gases. In the scientific papers, which considered climate trends of the 21st century, fewer than 10% were inclined towards future cooling. Yeah, I'm gonna question that. While most papers predicted future warming, sure, the general public had little awareness of carbon dioxide's effects on the climate, but Science News in May 1959 forecast a 25% increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide in the 150 years from 1850 to 2000, with a consequent warming trend. The actual increase in this period of 29%. Let's see. Currently, there are some concerns about the possible regional cooling effects of a slowdown or shutdown of thermohaline circulation, which might be provoked by an increase of freshwater mixing in the North Atlantic due to glacial melting. The probability this is occurring is generally considered to be very low, and the IPCC notes even in models where THC weakens, there is still warming over Europe, for example. Yeah, I mean, clearly the majority of papers were concerned with global warming, which is why all of these other publications and whatnot were showing global cooling. I mean, literally, Wikipedia is even admitting that the science, quote unquote, at the time, in the prior to the 1970s, was actually showing that that everything was cooling. Yeah, not a conspiracy theory. I mean, and now now the science is all the scientists agree on everything crap, and clearly they're not wrong about climate change. They were wrong in the past. They were wrong 20 years ago. I mean, good Lord, nobody can keep up. Nobody can keep up. And the idea that like climate change has nothing to do with politics, has nothing to do with governments or anything like that. I mean, look at this. Look at this. Let's see. Yeah. Al Gore and John Kerry, politicians, not scientists, liberal Democrats, are saying things like that's what's boiling the oceans, creating these atmospheric rivers and the rain bombs and sucking the moisture out of the land and creating the droughts and melting the ice and raising the sea levels. Big one that everybody's been talking about over the last 25 years. Sea levels are rising and causing these waves of climate refugees. I mean, it's just crazy, which clearly has nothing to do with the government, even though the U.S. State Department has an office of the U.S. Special President Envoy for Climate, which was held by John Kerry recently. The Office of Special President Envoy for Climate, the Special President Envoy for Climate is charged with leading U.S. diplomacy to address the climate crisis. Integrated closely with the State Department, existing expert staff and personnel, including the Office of Global Change and the Bureau of Oceans and International Environmental and Scientific Affairs. I mean, of course this stuff is political. This is objectively political. Climate change is absolutely political. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Denial of basic evolutionary biology is in the interest of Christian theocrats. These efforts go all the way up the ladder to figures like the Koch brothers. I'm not saying Terry's funded by the Koch brothers, but he rides this prevalent attitude of reality denial and hostility toward any form of expertise to this bizarre prominence that now has people questioning second-grade math. To wield an agenda that is in opposition with science, one must popularize the notion that science is wrong and evil. Universities...
Nobody says that. Nobody says it's a complete straw man. Nobody says science is wrong and evil. There is clearly a dogmatic nature to science. Or a better, let me rephrase that. There's clearly dogmatism within the scientific community and academia. And as an atheist, you have no objective standard for what is evil. So it's irrelevant. Because what you think is evil, atheist Professor Dave, could be completely different from another atheist. It's irrelevant. It's your personal preference. You have no coherent, cohesive ideology. You've already contradicted yourself multiple times, and you're going to continue to contradict yourself. And no, people don't demonize universities because of science denial. People demonize universities because they're ridiculous things that they teach, like critical race theory, and just the dogmatism that's within universities. I mean, what are the statistics around? Let's see. Where's this? Let's see. Yeah. Oh, there's no dogmatism within the universities. This is from the Los Angeles Times. This is an article from May 2016. Professors are overwhelmingly liberal. Do universities need to change hiring practices? So, continuing reading this article, at the time of our study, a fifth of all American adults describe themselves as liberal. Simmons and I found that about half of the faculty did. Even among professors who chose the label moderate, liberal political opinions were quite common, especially on social issues such as gender equality and gay rights. Only 14% of professors in our survey identified as Republicans. I mean, academia isn't teeming with radicals, but it is one of the most liberal occupations in America. Oh, there's no dogmatism within academia. There's no political agendas. There's no agendas within the scientific scientific community or anything like that. It's all Christian, theocrats, a hard right nationalist Christian theocrats and people like that. No, it's not. It's not even close. This is stupid. We're going to get into some of these universities and what they're teaching because Dave is going to once again just bring up multiple manipulative talking points that are just blatantly, obviously wrong. So we'll continue.
The places where you gain knowledge are evil. Don't go there and learn things so that you can figure out how to resist our brainwashing, and also how to organize and topple our political structures. Universities are famously places that stand up against the powers that be, so they must be demonized. It is a successful campaign because many people are happy to have a reason to not learn anything and cling to primitive beliefs without basis or self-scrutiny. It goes without saying that religion is a primary driver of anti-science mentality.
Yes, this is where, it's just so hilarious that people like Dave are so anti-religious, they're anti-Christian. Science and religion it's one of the, science and religion have been going at each other for forever. It's, science and religion are in conflict, except the fact that, where are we? Oh, what do you know? Harvard was founded by Christians. Yes, Harvard was founded by Puritans in 1636. Oh, to be Christian is to be anti-science. Literally, it's no wonder. It's just some coincidence that the West, that one of its founding principles was Christianity, had the scientific revolution. That Christians founded a lot of the elite universities in the United States. It's not just Harvard. You look at a lot of the elite universities founded by Christians, founded by Protestants. Oh, but these universities must be demonized because they're so anti-science, even though Christians literally founded the very institutions that you say are anti-religious or, that are just completely contrary to religion, even though it was religious people that founded the very institutions that you people love so much. You just contradict yourselves all the time. All the time.
Because scientific progress, particularly as of late, has challenged many religious narratives, such as immaculate divine creation. This triggers fear of mortality as their narrative is eroded, and they lash out in precisely the same way as one would defend themselves against physical violence, with hostility and tribalism.
Yes, it challenges morality, these institutions and the dogmatic nature of the scientific community and atheists and the promotion of evolution and all that challenges Christianity to the point where it just angers Christians and we take up arms and, all this kind of stuff, except for the fact that there are plenty of statistics that demonstrate the average atheist, leftist, liberal has much more likelihood of having a mental disorder. Oh, where is this? According to Psychology Today, religious people tend to have better mental health than non-religious people, including lower rates of depression. I mean, atheists are way more likely to be depressed. Suicide rates are higher. They're more likely to be on antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication. They're way more likely to have mental disorders. But yeah, it's the religious folks who get, that have problems with the questioning their morality and their mortality, and they become hostile and violent and things like that. Yeah, that's why atheists and liberals are way more depressed and less happy than religious folks. I mean, it's so backwards, as if it's the religious folks that run these academic, these institutions, and they're the ones kicking people out of universities. No. It's the religious folks. It's particularly the fundamentalist religious folks that are ostracized. Obviously, overwhelmingly, institutions and professors are liberals. Yeah, that's why right wingers get ostracized out of Hollywood and academia, and they have their careers ruined, and they get kicked off of platforms like, YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. I mean, this is just like, how is this? Does this even need to be said at this point?
At the same time, this is not purely a religious issue.
Oh, you think? You think, Dave? You think, Dave? You're just kind of proving my point. It's gotten so bad on your side that you're actually having to admit it.
Has at this point completely permeated secular politics. I myself am not a Democrat, and I no longer vote Democrat out of total disillusionment with the party, as it does not have the best interests of the American people in mind. But the Republican Party is cartoonishly apocalyptic in comparison.
Yes. The Democratic Party does not have the best interests in mind, but the Republican Party even less. Crazier, to the point where, Republicans are just apocalyptic. I mean, just fear mongering. Yeah, Democrats. Cory Booker, the Democrats love Americans so much. This dude, during his presidential campaign, during the last presidential election in 2020, who's a Democrat, literally campaigned in Mexico. Went to Mexico to see asylum seekers. Why would a presidential candidate go to a different country to see non-American citizens? Because the Democratic Party has always had the interest of the American people more so than, they're way less destructive to, traditional American society and the American people than Republicans. Democrats are so anti-American, they go to other countries to campaign. Oh my gosh. Good. This is just, oh God, I love reviewing Dogmatic Dave videos. This is literally anybody with an average IQ, an above average IQ should be able to see through this crap. The fact that some of this stuff has to be said, and that a random person like me even has to address some of this stuff is embarrassing. This is embarrassing if you follow the Dogmatic Dave.
Know nothing, proudly stupid, in denial of truly all science, actively pushing us back into the Dark Ages in terms of both ignorance and authoritarian control by the church. In the wake of this, to pretend that idiots like Terry should be given a voice is preposterous. He is not the culprit, but he exacerbates larger trends already in place. He does not deserve a platform. He is not part of any legitimate conversation.
He does not deserve a platform. His free speech should be violated. How authoritarian of you, Dogmatic Dave. Oh my gosh. I care so much about the American people that I don't vote Democrat anymore, even though I was a Democrat, because I believe that people should be kicked off of YouTube and they should have their free speech violated. You shouldn't have a platform. Then I'm going to transition into Eric Weinstein, who was literally on a podcast, saying he doesn't have a Republican bone in his body. As if Eric Weinstein isn't some push shill, gatekeeping push shill for quote unquote conservatives. Yeah, Eric Weinstein. I'm going to use him transition into him as an example of all the chaos and nonsense going on, from the right and from religious folks, because Eric Weinstein is such a Christian. Weinstein? Yeah, Eric Weinstein's not a Christian, Dave. Pretty sure he's an atheist, but he's definitely not a Christian. Why don't y'all go Google his early life? I have a pretty good guess of what group he may be involved with. It was overwhelmingly liberal and atheist and Democrat and all that. Yeah, Eric Weinstein is not a fundamentalist Christian nationalist right-winger. Oh my gosh. Holy mackerel.
And most of the figures with any kind of expertise that shoehorn their way into the conversation have ulterior motives as well, and only serve to further confuse the public, like Eric. So let's get down to brass tacks. What is anti-intellectualism at its core? It boils down to 3 principles. 1. Religious anti-rationalism, essentially emotions over facts. 2. Populist.
Is that why religious people are so depressed and get so emotional, like St. Hubert and all these left-leaning atheist liberals and Democrats at universities who scream and whine and yell and can't control their emotions? I mean, what is the meme of like the androgynous-looking individual who gets down on their knees and just starts screaming with the glasses on? That's so hilarious. Yeah, that's. And they're so well adjusted. Democrats are so well adjusted, and they don't say ridiculous things and say that men can be women and women can be men, and deny reality and do a whole bunch of crazy stuff. I mean, just get out of here.
Anti-elitism, or the rejection of intellectual institutions. And 3. Instrumentalism, the belief that pursuit of knowledge only serves practical means, namely profit. This movement intends to halt the acquisition of new knowledge that would undermine groups with power and privilege. Misinformation that benefits those in power is perpetuated, and those who speak truth to that power are preemptively character assassinated.
Yeah. By people like you, Dave. You've literally character assassinated multiple people in this video alone. You are literally contradicting yourself because you're so incoherent and your followers are such low IQ, brain damage fools. They can't even see how you just contradicted yourself. They just go down here and give 25,000 upvotes. I mean, literally, you have character assassinated multiple people in this video alone. You've demonstrated how you would be in an authoritarian nature, violate people's free speech by not allowing them platforms because you were the arbiter of what is right think and wrong think. I mean, good night. We're not even, I mean, there's still, holy mackerel, I mean, there's still 3 minutes left in this video.
The educational sphere is not completely blameless, admittedly. Part of the disdain towards academia is fostered by the increasingly high cost of education. But this is not...
Yeah, academia is not partially to blame because people are so resentful of education solely because of the increasing cost. Really? That's why? You don't think it's because, oh, you brought up Eric Weinstein. You don't think it's because at colleges and universities this kind of stuff happens? Evergreen State College. In a controversial incident, Evergreen State College sparked national debate when it was proposed that white students should stay off campus for a day during a day of absence event. Yeah, it has nothing to do with stuff like that. It has nothing to do with stuff like this professor, this leader at Rutgers. What does she have to say?
In this room, who would be happy to be treated as this society in general treats our citizens, our black citizens, if you, as a white person, would be happy to receive the same treatment that our black citizens do in this society, please stand.
I mean, literally just pandering to an audience of students, maybe in a university auditorium, just racially profiling, white people. I, as a white person, would like to be able to criticize other groups of people, other demographics, without having my career ruined, without having to be anonymous on YouTube, without having to be kicked out of the banking system and kicked off of platforms and getting ostracized out of universities and all that. I as a white male would really like to be able to, you know, not have the NAACP and entire institutions and government programs that promote discrimination against other groups other than me, like affirmative action. I mean, yeah, it has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with, here's another Rutgers professor. It's just a wonderful individual. What does this Rutgers professor have to say? Because this clearly has nothing to do with why people don't want to pay lots of money for learning just complete and utter immoral nonsense. What does this professor have to say?
Thing I want to say to you is we got to take these motherfuckers out. Whiteness is going to have an end date because it is not, despite what white people think of themselves, they do not defy the laws of eternity, right?
Yeah, I mean that's not objectively that's not just objectively racist, immoral, and wrong. When professors like this, and I mean, known university, Rutgers, who say things, we got to get rid of these mother effers. White people are committed to being villains. Oh, yeah, it has nothing to do with the University of Chicago is still offering a course called The Problem of Whiteness. It has literally nothing to do with crap like this. It has nothing to do with professors who say things like, of course, would you be able to, they're asked questions like, would you be able to, 100 years from now, delineate between or determine between a male skeleton and a female skeleton, if you dug them up 100 years from now that were buried, would you be able to determine which one was female and male? And an anthropologist saying no. That's objectively wrong. That's objectively unscientific. That is a college professor saying stuff like that. I'm not even going to pull up the example because it's just, I mean, who cares at this point? The idea there's no reason to question academia and their morality, which atheists can't define morality at all. They have no standard for it, is utterly ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. It's just because it's just expensive.
Not in itself a justification for abandoning the sanctity of centers of knowledge.
Yeah, abandoning the sanctity of centers of knowledge. The president of Stanford had to step down last year due to potential fraud in research that he had done in the past. I mean, as recently as last year, the president of Harvard, Claudine Gay, had to step down for multiple reasons. One being plagiarism. I mean, is it as if academia is some, they're obviously moral. They obviously promote morality with their rampant degeneracy and sexual promiscuity and, professors who clearly don't, denigrate other groups of people. And I mean, it's utterly ridiculous.
Corporations do not have their financial interests challenged when the public cannot even identify the issues that they are harmed by, thus perpetuating their own subjugation. We can historically blame the fossil fuel industry, the tobacco.
The fossil fuel industry. I bet a lot of Dogmatic Dave fans actually believe that quote unquote fossil fuels are created by dead dinosaur bones. You know why they were called fossil fuels? Why that name was promoted and so popular? Because of academia, the media, scientists. Fossil fuels. No. Literally just Google this. No, fossil fuels are not made of dinosaur fossils. Most fossil fuel material we use today comes from algae, bacteria, and plants. I bet this one. Science is never wrong. There's never agendas behind this kind of stuff. Yeah, I bet literally very few Dogmatic Dave fans knew that. You just learned something. You're welcome.
Industry and so forth, but we do not extend this to scientific knowledge itself. Politicians, corporations, and religious institutions stand to benefit the most from promoting anti-intellectualism.
And who are the leaders of the political apparatus right now? Is it Donald Trump in charge? No, it's not a Republican who's the president right now. Kamala Harris is a Republican. Joe Biden's a Republican. I mean, this is let's just constantly use examples like Fox News, which I'm not even some neocon boomer conservative. I don't watch Fox News. So all the conservatives who watch this, yeah, is it a wonder that so many establishment Republicans and Democrats, so many of them don't like Trump. They all agree on like foreign policy. They all, like legal immigration, the country. I mean, literally conservatisms. What if conservatives conserved? The country has rapidly gone left and anti-religious, as if conservatives and mainstream Republicans are any different from Democrats. That's the thing, that you're not going to learn anything from Professor Dave and people like him. Gatekeepers and just mouthpiece shills on YouTube who would never say things like, there's a very good argument to demonstrate from multiple facts and data points to demonstrate that there really isn't a two-party system in the United States anymore from a political standpoint. Because mainstream Republicans are just Democrats from 25 years ago. Look at the values and the policies that they push. There is no Democrats or Republicans and right wing versus left wing and liberal versus conservative and all this stuff. Most mainstream politicians are globalist, liberals, and they're all, it's a unipart. They're two sides of the same coin. They're two wings of the same bird. Tons of arguments to be made for that point. It's just, of course, Professor Dave just demonizes one side. I mean, it's so ridiculous. So ridiculous.
They enact the politicization of nonpartisan issues, polarizing things like climate change so severely that simply acknowledging basic science gets one ostracized.
Yes, I've already demonstrated how climate change is objectively political. How climate change and the funds and, again, the office of the U.S. Special President Envoy for Climate, it is inherently political. The United States government is extremely involved, provides funding and all that for climate science and climate change, a lot of which is overwhelmingly liberal and Democrat. As if there's no lobbyist involved in that. As if there's no agendas and people aren't getting rich off this stuff. I mean, holy mackerel. Of course climate change is political. It's objectively political.
This spills over into the social realm just as easily. Anti-intellectualism breeds nationalism, or the same blind allegiance to a governing body that is actively sowing the seeds of division.
No, I already showed why nationalism is starting to pop up in the West, in Europe, and in the United States, which you're not going to get. You're not going to get on, a lot of the gatekeeping mainstream news. This kind of stuff at Evergreen College, professors at universities pandering to white people, professors saying we got to get rid of these MFers. The University of Chicago is still offering a course called The Problem of Whiteness. I mean, that's why nationalism is propping up. And here's something else for Dogmatic Dave fans and the general listener. White nationalism is a nonsense term. It doesn't mean anything. It means nothing. It's has no meaning behind it. It's people confusing terms. Because I've done a video on the word nation and nationalism because people misuse it all the time. They think nation is synonymous with government and country, and that's all it ever means. No. That's why white nationalism is a nonsense term. White is a broad spectrum racial term for many different nations. The Scottish people are white, but they are not the Germans. The Germans are white, but they are not the French. The French are white historically, but they are not the Irish. Unless certain demographics are claiming that the Irish have always been black, or the Egyptians or something like that. But these are all distinctly different nations, but they are all white. That's why you can't have white nationalism, because white is not a nation. You can have American nationalism. You can have, uh, Jewish nationalism. That's a distinct people group. But yeah, as if there's no reason why, a certain group of people are kind of like, yeah, there's a lot of people that, there's a lot of stuff that certain people groups can't say. They can't, they can't think as a collective. That's evil if certain groups of people think as a collective, even though by Dogmatic Dave's very own belief system under evolution, different groups of people would absolutely evolve to have different, more than just skin tone differences. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
This is the reason for equating Black Lives Matter or any other kind of social justice with fascism, and the justification for this always involves inventing violent intent out of thin air.
Yes. And for those of you who are reading it, Inventing Violent Intent, which is ABC News, clearly, or NBC News, clearly NBC News doesn't have a left-leaning agenda or anything like that, and isn't just a propped up, gatekeeping, narrative pushing, just nonsense machine. But the article that he brought up was white nationalist group posing as Antifa called for violence on Twitter. Yes, as if Antifa and Black Lives Matter and groups like that didn't legitimately target certain racial groups, burn things down, as if it was a bunch of, hard right-wing religious folks that were, during a certain summer when everybody was supposed to be, you're supposed to be social distancing, there weren't massive groups of non-Caucasian people burning cars and things like that. Of course, we gotta bring up the nonsensical white nationalist term and this actually looks like a conspiracy theory. Are you promoting conspiracy theories, Professor Dave? White nationalist group posing as Antifa called for violence on Twitter. Are you a conspiracy theorist, Dave? You promoting conspiracy theories?
Intent out of thin air. This in turn is used to justify a militarized police force under the guise of protection. And lastly, anti-intellectualism promotes being skeptical towards perceived authority while demanding that people blindly follow demagogues who are amplified by social media.
Literally like Dogmatic Dave. Literally like this channel. Literally. Promoted by social media. It's clearly all the right-wing religious, fundamentalist Christians and white nationalists. That doesn't mean anything. It's clearly all those people who run YouTube and, run the government and allow mass immigration of, different demographics into the country. And, they're the ones who run Hollywood and the media and academic institutions. No, it's not. It's not people like me, a conspiracy theorist, a right-wing conspiracy theorist who run YouTube. It's liberals, left-wings, atheists, all kinds of stuff. All kinds of, anti-religious and things like, it's all those types of things that are promoted and allowed and, influenced and propped up by the algorithms, if not outright just given giant megaphones. Literally people like Dogmatic Dave.
People who fall into this way of thinking will place an unreasonable level of skepticism on the body of knowledge produced by tens of thousands of scientists operating all over the world under every type of government and in both the public and private sector.
He literally just contradicted himself again. People who are skeptical of science, who operate all over the world under every type of government. Every type of government? Does that mean communist governments? Does that mean theocracies? Every type of government? I mean, good. I mean, this is just so ridiculous. Literally, he just completely undermined a point he made earlier in the video, where you have to watch out for types of government, specifically if you're a scientist. And then he used, and then he used examples that completely undermine his own belief system, many of his own beliefs. I mean, it's Dogmatic Dave fans, how do you not see this? How do you not see this?
Yet they place absolutely zero scrutiny on the figures who confidently feed them the narratives they enjoy, which are riddled with distortion and fabrication almost without exception.
Is that why a lot of the quote-unquote right-wing and establishment Republicans, and there was an entire phenomenon of never Trumpers on the right? Because they're just so brainwashed. Republicans are just so apocalyptically brainwashed and dumb that they don't completely contradict what you're trying to say right here, Dogmatic Dave, because plenty of them were never Trumpers. J.D. Vance was a never Trumper. Trump did not just get outright support from right-wingers and Republicans. There are tons of people that question Trump. He's literally had to, have a mugshot taken of him within the last year. I mean, good night.
These people find comfort in the strength and confidence such figures convey in an appeal to shared beliefs. That's why Trump famously stated that he could shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue and he wouldn't lose any voters.
I mean, even if this is the incorrect context, as if context isn't important about saying some of this stuff. What if Trump was defending himself, Dogmatic Dave? Oh, that's right. You're a Democrat, or you're a left winger, so you're probably anti-Second Amendment. We wouldn't want anybody defending himself. We definitely wouldn't want politicians to use rhetoric and say things that they don't really mean or anything like that. There's no nuance or context or anything like that. I mean, this is just so low tier.
Because their idolization of him is emotional, not logical. In the end, and here comes Dave the broken record, anti-science mentality and reality denial is the single greatest threat facing mankind. Take a movie.
Literally not even close. There are tons of other threats. He does this in so many videos. There's so much fear-mongering in his videos. Anti-scientist mentality is the single greatest threat to mankind. It's not nuclear weapons that were developed by science. It's not war or political strife or the moral decay of a society because values and moral ethics and things like that don't matter. It's not politics and political tension. It's not pride of leadership and having immoral leaders, which you people can't define immorality whatsoever as an atheist. I mean, there are tons of things that are infinitely more important, as if there's no reason to question the scientific community and, academia and research institutions. I mean, it's amazing to me that this has to be said.
Movie like Don't Look Up. Though obviously satirical, the manner in which the general public in this modern era would react to any existential threat was depicted magnificently. There is no issue that could be more nonpartisan than a comet coming to kill us all, and yet the comet was hyper-politicized.
His best example, notice this, his best example for the hyperbolic just nonsense that he pushes around anti-scientific rhetoric being the greatest threat to humanity is literally a Hollywood made-up scenario. He's not even using a real-world scenario to demonstrate his point because there really isn't one. His best example is a movie, is a fictitious movie. Oh my God, it's just such fear-mongering and rhetoric.
People were brainwashed into believing the comet didn't exist, and a megalomaniacal tech oligarch fucked us all. In my estimation, that is roughly what would happen if there were another far deadlier pandemic or some other such situation.
Yeah, and I've done a video review of Dogmatic Dave on his narrative pushing and things that he said during one of his videos from 4 years ago on COVID and just how blatantly wrong he was. I mean, literally, he can't really use COVID. He has to use a fictitious movie. He couldn't use the prior pandemic because there's just so much nonsense in the last pandemic. I mean, clearly not as serious as everybody made it out to be. You can look at the statistics. YouTube's probably going to take this video down, whatever. But I mean, in that video alone, Dogmatic Dave is blatantly wrong. And a lot of his fans were, well, he was wrong about statistics and not overwhelming hospitals and things like that because we know he was inaccurate now because we have statistics after the fact. Okay, whatever. As if that has nothing to do with pushing the narrative or being rhetorical and fear-mongering at the time. And there was no reason to believe the conspiracy theorists, once again, who were like, yeah, we're not overwhelming the hospitals and healthcare systems. And it was after the fact, once we had actual statistics to demonstrate it, that's when you're justified. No apology for being wrong or anything like that. Yeah, not even the point. In one of his videos, he literally says things like, garlic doesn't have any antiviral properties. And garlic, because of its non-antiviral properties, will not help you in the prevention of getting a virus or help you once you get a virus and all that kind of stuff. Completely wrong, completely false. Garlic, certain things that you eat and the compounds and elements and things in them or chemicals in them absolutely have antiviral properties. They can help prevent the infection of a virus. They can help you once you have a viral sickness. I mean, literally was wrong. There's no information after the fact. You can literally go to the Library of Medicine, U.S. National Library of Medicine.gov, and read giant articles talking about how there's antiviral properties to certain things within garlic. He's wrong. But Dogmatic Dave fans, they don't even address that kind of stuff. They just love this demagogue.
And the culprit is not the scientific community. It's the pundits and demagogues who abuse the power of the internet to warp public perception of reality.
Like Professor Dave explains.
People like Rogan are not the main culprits, but they also are not blameless and deserve their share of criticism for amplifying the chaos for monetary gain. And sadly, other than directly neutralizing sources of disinformation and
directly neutralizing sources of disinformation. Who are you in your infinite wisdom and your just godlike knowledge, Professor Dave, to determine what is and is not disinformation? Who are you to allow and give authority or have the authority to kick people off of platforms and violate their free speech? Who's being the authoritarian, Dave? Dogmatic Dave fans, this is unbelievably authoritarian. Yet he's been crying about it from right-wingers and, religious people and fundamentalist religious people and, all this. He's the authoritarian. He wishes he was an authoritarian at the very least.
Promoting general science literacy. I don't have a meaningful solution to this doomsday recipe. I don't know how to fundamentally change human nature to be either less corrupt and manipulative or less blindly credulous.
You don't even have a good standard for why, or belief system, or coherent belief system around why human beings are corrupt and manipulative. You don't even have a moral standard for what it constitutes corruption or manipulation. You have no coherent belief system around why manipulation and corruption is bad. You're an atheist. You have no objective standard for any of that. Why is manipulation bad? Why is corruption bad? What if corruption benefits the species? I mean, there's all kind. Why wouldn't you let a disease burn through a population instead of vaccinating them so the weaker genetics don't procreate and the stronger genetics do? Therefore, we have a population that's immune to diseases. Why not survival of the fittest? Your entire belief system, Dogmatic Dave, is just an incoherent mess of nonsense and crap. You have no idea. Christianity has a much better understanding of human nature, why human beings are fallen, why they lie, why they're corrupt, why they're manipulative, how it happened. You have no idea how to explain all the quote unquote evil stuff that goes on as an atheist. You have no idea. Why would human beings evolve to be evil? How do you define evil? I mean, it's embarrassing.
I will admit my youthful optimism has been diminished as I enter middle age, but I'm not giving up just yet.
Please give up, Dogmatic Dave. Please give up. I'm just kidding. Don't give up. I love reviewing your videos. It's exhausting, but it is fun. I can't wait for the comment section on this video, but that's all I've got for Dogmatic Dave.
We need stories. We need stories.
For Dogmatic Dave and his videos and his nonsense. We're definitely, I'm sure he'll do something coming up that's just equally full of crap as this one. But hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to the next one. Thanks.